2 years later, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile when 7 healthy, fat cows came up from the river and grazed among the reeds. Then 7 thin, ugly cows came up and ate the 7 fat cows. Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and full, grew on a single stalk. Then 7 thin, scorched heads swallowed the healthy ones. Pharaoh was troubled, but no one could interpret his dreams. Then the chief cupbearer remembered Joseph and said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings." He explained how Joseph had interpreted his dream in prison. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, who was quickly brought from the dungeon. Pharaoh said, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I've heard you can." Joseph replied, "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he seeks." Pharaoh told Joseph the dreams. Joseph said, "The dreams mean the same thing. God is telling Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows and 7 good heads of grain are 7 years of abundance. The 7 lean cows and withered grain are 7 years of famine." Joseph continued, "The matter has been firmly decided by God, and he will do it soon. Let Pharaoh appoint a wise man to manage the land during the years of abundance." Pharaoh was pleased and said, "Can we find anyone like this man, in whom is the Spirit of God?" So Pharaoh made Joseph ruler over Egypt, second only to himself. He gave him fine clothes, a gold chain, and the name Zaphenath-Paneah. Joseph was 30 years old. During the 7 years of abundance, Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain. Before the famine, Joseph had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Then the 7 years of famine began, and all the world came to Egypt for grain, because the famine was severe. When Jacob learned there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you just keep looking at each other? Go down and buy some." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went to Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, afraid harm might come to him. Joseph was the governor, and his brothers came and bowed before him. Though they didn't recognize him, Joseph knew who they were. He spoke harshly and accused them of being spies. They said, "We are honest men. There were 12 of us, but one is no more, and the youngest is with our father." Joseph said, "To test you, one must stay in prison while the rest return with grain. Bring your youngest brother back to prove your honesty." He kept Simeon in custody and sent the others back. Joseph had their silver secretly returned in their sacks. When they discovered it, they were afraid and said, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they returned home and told Jacob, he was distraught. "You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is gone, Simeon is gone, and now you want to take Benjamin." Reuben said, "You may put both of my sons to death if I don't bring Benjamin back." But Jacob said, "My son will not go down there with you." The famine continued. When their grain was gone, Jacob said, "Go back and buy more." But Judah said, "We cannot go unless you send Benjamin." Israel asked, "Why did you tell the man you had another brother?" They replied, "He questioned us closely." Judah said, "Send the boy with me, and I will be responsible for him." Their father agreed and sent them with double the silver and gifts. He said, "May God grant you mercy before the man." When Joseph saw Benjamin, he said to his steward, "Take these men to my house and prepare a meal." The brothers were afraid, thinking they would be seized. At Joseph's house, they explained about the silver in their sacks, but the steward said, "Don't worry. Your God must have put treasure in your sacks." When Joseph arrived, they bowed down to him again. He asked about their father and was deeply moved when he saw Benjamin. He left the room to weep. He served them a feast, but they were seated by age, which astonished them. Benjamin was given 5 times as much food as anyone else. Joseph instructed his steward to fill the sacks and return the silver again, but this time he placed his own silver cup in Benjamin's bag. After they left the city, Joseph sent men after them. They caught up and searched the bags, starting with the oldest, and found the cup in Benjamin's. They tore their clothes in grief and returned to Joseph's house. Joseph said, "Only the one who had the cup will stay as my slave. The rest of you may go." But Judah stepped forward. He explained how their father had already lost 1 son and could not bear to lose Benjamin. He pleaded, "Please let me stay instead. Let the boy return with his brothers." Joseph could no longer control himself. He cried out, "Have everyone leave me." He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him. Then he said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers were stunned and couldn't speak. Joseph said, "Do not be afraid or angry with yourselves. God sent me ahead of you to preserve life. There are still 5 years of famine to come. He told them to bring their father quickly. "You shall live in Goshen. I will provide for you." Then he threw his arms around Benjamin and wept, and he kissed all his brothers. Pharaoh heard of it and was pleased. He told Joseph to send wagons and provisions for the whole family. So the brothers returned to Canaan and told Jacob, "Joseph is still alive." Jacob was stunned. But when he saw the carts Joseph had sent, his spirit revived. And he said, "I will go and see him before I die." So Israel set out with all that he had. When he reached Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. That night, God spoke to him in a vision. "Jacob, Jacob. I am God. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt. I will go down with you and bring you back again. And Joseph's hand will close your eyes." Jacob left Beersheba, and his sons brought him, their children, and their wives to Egypt in carts provided by Pharaoh. They took their livestock and possessions and arrived in Egypt, 70 in all from the house of Jacob. Jacob sent Judah ahead to Joseph. When they met, Joseph threw his arms around his father and wept a long time. Israel said, "Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." Joseph said to his brothers and his father's household, "I will speak to Pharaoh and tell him you are shepherds. When asked your occupation, say you have tended livestock all your lives, so you may settle in Goshen." Joseph brought 5 of his brothers before Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked, "What is your occupation?" They replied, "Your servants are shepherds." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Let them settle in the best part of the land, in Goshen. And if any are capable, put them in charge of my livestock." Joseph brought his father before Pharaoh. Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked, "How old are you?" Jacob answered, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. Few and difficult have been the days of my life." Joseph settled his family in Goshen and provided them with food. As the famine grew severe, Joseph sold grain to the Egyptians. Eventually, they traded their money, livestock, and even land for food. Joseph acquired all the land for Pharaoh, except for the land of the priests. Israel lived in Egypt for 17 years. Before he died, Jacob made Joseph promise to bury him not in Egypt, but with his fathers in Canaan. Some time later, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." He went to him with his sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Jacob said, "God appeared to me in Luz and blessed me. Now your 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, will be mine as Reuben and Simeon are." Joseph brought his sons forward. Israel reached out his hands, but he crossed them, placing his right hand on the younger, Ephraim. Joseph tried to correct him, but Jacob said, "I know, my son. Manasseh will be great, but his younger brother will be greater." Then Jacob blessed Joseph, saying, "May God bless the boys. Let them increase greatly on the earth." Then Jacob called all his sons and said, "Gather around, so I may tell you what will happen in days to come." He spoke words over each of his sons, blessings, warnings, and prophecies. He honored Judah, saying, "The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet." He spoke of Joseph, "Joseph is a fruitful vine by a well. His arms were made strong by the mighty one of Jacob." When he had finished giving his blessings, Jacob instructed them, "I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave in the field of Machpelah, near Mamre." Then Jacob breathed his last and was gathered to his people. Joseph threw himself on his father and wept over him. He ordered physicians to embalm Jacob, which took 40 days. The Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. Then Joseph asked Pharaoh's permission to bury his father in Canaan. A great procession went up, including chariots and horsemen. They buried Jacob in the cave of Machpelah. After returning to Egypt, Joseph's brothers feared he might now take revenge. They sent word to him, saying, "Our father left instructions to forgive us." Joseph wept when he heard this. He said, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to save many lives." Joseph remained in Egypt with his brothers. He lived to be 110 years old and saw the 3rd generation of Ephraim's children. Before he died, Joseph said, "God will surely come to your aid and take you to the land he promised." And he made them swear to carry his bones from Egypt. Joseph died and was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. The book of Genesis ends here, a beginning rooted in creation, covenant, and the providence of God.